I'm going to ask you, I don't know what to do. I'd like these back for now. I'll have them for you. Okay, you already wrote on it. Okay. As long as you bring it back, because you know. No, you know something? It's okay. We'll just have her run off more copies. It's far. Did you get one, Lori?
I did not.
Thank you.
Okay. Here you go, Jane. Oh, that's good coffee. Now you're talking. Okay, welcome everybody. Okay, this is the class based on the book that I've been trying to write for I don't know how many years. Okay? Because I get bits and pieces of information, and then I get more information, and then writing is like almost like being an artist, you know? You go back over it. I don't know if that's an artist is like, but it seems like writing is like you can never end, because how do you want to write it and express it in this way and that way, and it doesn't seem to end, but I got to end it. So I'm asking you to help. Okay, I'm welcome not during while we're in the class, but after. Please take notes, and please send in any comments. Please, I really would welcome any comments. And even if you want to say, Rabbi, this is just a bunch of crud, that's all good too, right? And just tell me why you think it's crud. Okay, so I write this book in the introduction. I left out here what spawned me. Many things did. To write on this topic, because really the topic is, and then I of course started writing the book before the book The Secret came out, okay, of course, and if anybody is familiar with that book, I'm glad you're not. It's good, it's okay, but basically it's the study of the mind in terms of how our contemplations, our thoughts create our reality, how much. And what are the sources for that? It's big in the psychology world. Self-help, huge. Used to be, I don't know how big in the bookstores the self-help section is. It used to be really big. I don't know about recently, because I used to visit them all, because my dad is the one of the original gurus in consciousness raising in Los Angeles. He taught all kinds of seminars all over the place. Even as far as India. He was flown to India to teach seminars on the thoughts that we think form our reality. And I don't know if you were ever familiar with such a phrase. Maybe yes, maybe no. Okay? But it definitely owed a question to me, because I knew my dad who wrote a book like that, and here I was in yeshiva, and then all of a sudden somebody sends me his book fresh off the press, his book that he wrote, called The Incredible, Credible Cosmic Consciousness Diet for Weight Loss and World Peace, or How to Have Your Cake and Eat It Too. That's his title, long title. It's The Incredible, Credible Cosmic Consciousness Diet. Let's look at it just for short, okay? Basically a consciousness diet. And so I saw this book and I didn't know really what to make of it, okay? And I knew, because he's teaching classes, and I'm around that environment, I'm around those people as I was in my teens, okay? He wasn't always like that. He used to own a chain of clothing stores for small women, okay? Petite Sophisticates, the room 222. He used to provide the actresses their clothes, okay? Things like that in Los Angeles. Then he did it all, went to school, he got a PhD, and then he started teaching this stuff, okay? And then, of course, even that morphed to very much what he's doing today, and kind of like what I'm doing in a different form. So, anyways, but that didn't really spurn on so much until what happened was in about 1996. I got a phone call. I was living in Israel, 1996, that my dad was very sick. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor, inoperable. They gave him 2 weeks, 2 months to live. The person who came and called me, told me, went behind his back, because he didn't want me to know until it was time for him to check out. And he was okay with checking out. Okay, and gave his donation to the hospice program and was ready. When the pain was too great, he was going to get on a train and disappear to San Diego. I flew out I'm just going to cut the story short. Basically, I had a background in alternative medicine. I had tinctures. I had diet plans. I says, listen, if you don't want to do the chemo like everybody else is doing, because he saw his mom dwindle on chemo and other people also. So let's do this. Do the alternative. Let's take it. He says, no, I don't want to do that. Because if something should happen, I should get better, it would take away my faith in God. My dad resigned to live day by day, now that I was there with his grandkids. He resigned day by day. I'm going to live, and I'm going to just look to God for peace of mind. And if the pain gets too great, then I check out. That was basically what it was. And I was, of course, completely brokenhearted. Like, I've got this, I've got that. I had special tinctures that were experimental, okay? No, I don't want it, nothing. Okay, so anyways, we got jobs out there. We hung out there for a while, and a year later, he's still around. Now, he was shaken every 10 minutes, half his body. It was like that. And we would bring him food from time to time, because I think he all of his money was basically spent on doctors or other, what we call it, second opinions or whatever have you. He didn't have any money. We would bring him money. We would bring him food, but sometimes he would be there, and sometimes he would just had to retire and just go lie down. Anyways, a year later, he's around. We're walking around the same park there in the valley, and he says, as we're walking around, he says, I'm still here. I don't know what happened. A friend of mine pushed me to go get MRIs again, and I didn't want to go. Apparently at that time, the MRIs were not like what they are now. I think you have to sit there for a long, long time, and it's a big hassle, a big pain. Can't move and things like that. So he says, no, I'm not. A friend pushed him, just don't go do it. So he went and he did it. And then, of course, my dad is going on telling me, he says, they lost the x-rays. They wanted me to come do it again. I'm like, totally, I'm out. So then, he forgot about it. Because the first thing he did, of course, when he was diagnosed was, he says, what do doctors know? It's a very astounding idea. I know for some people it could shock, definitely shocks, scratches that record. He definitely says they don't know. Only God knows. And he looked to God for peace of mind day by day, basically meditated. A year later, here he's walking around the same park. He says, they called me back. In the same conversation I had, they called me back. He says they couldn't find a trace of a brain tumor. Okay? I don't know. But all he does know, and then the story developed a little bit more. My Rosh Hashiva, my Rabbi Mordechai Goldstein, happened to come to LA for some reason, to see his brother. I came with my students because I was teaching in a school at the airport to greet my Rosh Hashiva and say, Rabbi, I'm out here because of my dad who was sick, and what happened? And he says, I got to meet him. Bring him to me. So I had to take him Saturday night, the darkest of night, in the darkest alley of Venice Beach, where my Rosh Hashiva was staying. He had to stay near his brother, so it was this. I can't even describe the conditions of this hotel that he was staying in. And here we are sitting in the lobby, and my Rosh Hashiva is meeting my father. And he's trying to convince my father to come to Eretz Yisrael and things. He says, listen, my dad says to him, I live day by day. I only look to God for peace of mind. That's all I do. Because my Rosh Hashiva was asking him, what's your psychology? Because you're a therapist, right? Yeah. What's your therapist? I only teach people to believe in God. That was my dad. That is my dad. Still to this day. If you ask him call him for any advice, he will say, go to God. Go directly to God. He's the source. Always. Right? He's all there is. And then, of course, he'll lead you in ways that I'm going to also guide you. Anyways, seeing that happen with my dad, I'm like going, okay, what's with this stuff? What's with this concept of our thoughts creating our reality in line with Torah values? So then we moved back actually to Israel, spent 4 years there, and I went on a private little interview to some big rabbis asking them, what's with this rule? Okay? Is it true or not true, and where's the source? Now, I already had one source in my pocket. Hopefully, I'll share with you today. And the one source, of course, that he brings down, yes, it is true. One rabbi said, yes, our thoughts do create our reality. And of course, he brought the famous statement of our rabbis that we have on page, right? Yeah, on the next page. That b'derech shadam rotzei lelech molichin oso. In the way which a man wants to go, they lead him. This is a statement that we have in the Talmud. I'll get to it in a second. In any case, so because of that, so therefore it was always in the back of my mind, if this is really real, then obviously this is very revolutionary. Wouldn't you think? That all you have to do is basically reincorporate into your mind the right thoughts, and of course it will generate you this experience, right? Now, like I've been toying with this. So therefore, wait a minute. So if everybody gets their thoughts together, wouldn't that be quite life-changing? Yeah, it would. And my doubts were, is this a Torah value? Because I'm a firm believer in the Torah. And if it's not in the Torah, then it's garnished. I say it means nothing. It's empty. Okay? So therefore, I went on a hunt looking at sources. So what we're going to do over the next few weeks is going over these sources and trying to determine how much. And then, of course, I actually have those thoughts themselves, which I hold are completely dynamic. And that's why I wanted to use this course, as an introduction for the next course, which is tefillah, prayer. Okay? Because really, until you understand this, you don't really understand prayer. You don't really understand tefillah, and you don't really understand the words that we seem to be saying every single day in the Siddur, in the prayer book. People go through it by rote, but they really don't understand the tremendous dynamic principle of not only our change in our lives, but change in the world itself. And that's why it is so dynamic, okay? And when I teach these things, I see it everywhere. And I hear other rabbis teaching it, the same thing. So these are universal principles, okay? But I'm more looking at where does it come from in the Torah. So let's start with the first part, okay? I just brought this nice line here because of the idea that it's going to express, okay? Because he says, for thus says God, this is what the prophet Yirmiyahu said to the men of Yehuda and to Jerusalem, break up the untilled ground and do not sow among thorns. Sowing. We're talking about planting seeds, okay? Because what happens? What's the bottom line? Our mind is like a garden. Okay? Our mind is always like a garden. Whatever seeds that you plant in does sprout. It will sprout. It will come about. And there's scores of sources in this. Okay? In terms of thoughts, and definitely in terms of words and actions. Okay? So the truth is, and then now help me to correct any spelling errors too and grammatical errors too, okay? The truth is, you want to make marks on it and then you can, right? The truth is that our lives in this world are likened to a garden or a field. And there are sources for this. Masil Shisharim is the big one. He brings down this verse from King Solomon, that if a person leaves his life just without tending it, then what happens? Thorns and thistles will sprout. In other words, if a person is lazy, okay, we'll come to that verse soon. The Torah and sages blast us in the face with the concept of man is likened to a field, as in the verse, see, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field which God has blessed. And that comes from Genesis, actually in the little note on the bottom. When Yitzchak was giving a blessing to his son Yaakov, he smelled his son and exclaimed that his scent was that of a holy field, the Shekhinah, okay? Not like what happened to me in a bank yesterday, where a woman came up to me and says, what you wearing? It happened to be, I had my hat on. I got a hat. She asked me, like, what kind of cologne? I'm like, I'm not wearing any cologne. As I walked out, right? Briskly. Okay? I'm a rabbi, and she knew I was a rabbi. What's strange, okay? But in any case, here's Yaakov Avinu, though. He's the holiest of the holies. And of course, here's Yitzchak, who is blind in his tent, and this is when Yaakov Avinu has to put on the skins thing, and he has to make himself like Esav, and here he approaches his father, and his father has a scent, and he scents, it's a smell, and it's not a cologne. Yeah, it's not eau de Yaakov, or whatever you'd call it, okay? We got a new line, okay? He smells the Garden of Eden. Now, what does that have to do with it? Why? What is the smell, okay? Smells are huge in Kabbalistic literature, okay? That the certain scent of a person, and we're talking not a physical, tangible scent, okay? And we've gone over this in several places, where actually Rabbi Nachman warns not to rebuke people if you're not on the level. If you don't know how to rebuke a person, you can actually end up spoiling that person. You can make things worse. Because what happens is, let's say that person has certain qualities and they're dormant. And if you were to rebuke that person, you're shaking up those qualities. And therefore, according to Rabbi Nachman, you're shaking up the scent of those qualities. They have a scent to it. And that bad odor blocks a flow, blocks a blessing that comes to the world through him. Okay? In other words, a bad odor. So, just like if you have a can and Havdalah, we shake up the spice to make it more aromatic, right? To make more scent. So we shake it up, right? But if it was, let's say, something stinky in a jar, I will not use colorful language here, but if it was something stinky that was dormant, it doesn't have much of a smell, but if you shake it, it's going to go. So the idea really is, though, of course, sense things, something, but of course here is a blatant idea or concept of a field. A man is like a field. And also with the concept of man as a tree of the field, as we know, we're getting into Tu B'Shvat next month, okay? Man is a tree of the field, and the fruits of man, and not just necessarily children are the fruits of man. His deeds, his thoughts, his words, okay? So it's everywhere. One is either involved in cultivating and developing his garden, or he sits and he lets things go about their course, and like what we see bring down in Path of the Just, that brings down from Proverbs, a little sleep and a little slumber, then poverty will come. In other words, if you're not actively cultivating your field, which is your mind, I'm going to use it very specifically here. If you look at your mind as a garden, you've got to cultivate, you've got to plant things, okay? Our good thoughts, words, and deeds are considered the process of taking out the stones, cutting out weeds, plowing, planting, watering, and pruning the holy field. This is brought down actually from the Arizal. When Adam Arishon was put into the Garden of Eden, he was told to tend the garden, right? To work, right? La'avdo u'lashamro, to work there and to guard it. To guard it? What are you doing? What, you made him a gardener? Is this why you made man? To be a gardener? Adam Arishon? Here's, No, it wasn't that. It was a totally different thing that he was guarding, a totally different thing that he was tending to, really. Very Kabbalistically, he had to pull out the weeds and the thorns and remove the stones from the garden, but those are not literal stones and they're not literal weeds. What they were was extraneous thoughts. Extraneous thoughts, what I mean extraneous thoughts, what I mean by external motivations. A lot of times in our minds, deep, so deep, we don't even know why we're doing things, right? Right? Until after you did it. Or maybe the kid did it and you go, why did you do that? Okay? Right? Motivations are very deep. And we always are working to focus on our inner motivation that is deep within us, that is holy and pure. There is a deep motivation within us that is holy and pure. However, because we're in a world of distraction, we are plagued, we are flooded, we're bombarded with external motivations all the time, and we're trained with external motivations all the time, right? To have a nice car, to have a nice house, to have a nice things. Why do you want those things? Okay? So you have to focus and ask yourself and answer those questions. The idea really here is that Adam, in the Garden of Eden, of course, the stones that he was clearing out of the garden, the pruning of the holy field that he had to do, was taking care of the external motivations, meaning he's only involved in holiness, Adam, and only involved in fixing the world towards its final place, which was to experience the divine. And you had to go, of course, there was some prunes, there was some stones, there was some stuff that he had to do in order to be that co-creator. He had to feel like, if you ever have a garden and you have your kid help you in the garden, okay, so they'll clear one stone and then they'll go play with the hose. Okay, and then they'll leave you. They'll do one little thing. Okay. Adam had to co-create and co-participate in getting the garden ready. And the garden, of course, is not a literal garden. Okay? So what is the holy field? Obviously, it intimates that we are participating in a cosmic event which is likened to a garden in some respects. A cosmic garden that we, as creations, are involved in building. A means that can enable the Holy Infinite to express his infiniteness. This is a very deep line, okay? Because really I just cut to the chase, because like I say, this book, I don't want it to be more than 100 pages, because I want it to be a quick through reading, because I read somewhere that most people, if it's more than 100 pages, don't finish the book. So I want, hopefully, it'll be a quick reading. So I have to cut to the chase here, even though like some of these lines, there's like, whoa, Rabbi. Okay? I'm going to read that again. A means that enable the Holy Infinite to express his infiniteness. Why did God make a creation? So there's many reasons, and I get into a lot of discussion about why God made a creation. And of course, the simple idea was to bestow pleasure to another. Okay? And that idea of course, leads to the whole principle of the bread of shame, which we discussed about in many classes before. That, of course, in order to bestow pleasure, for us to be recipients of that pleasure, we have to feel that we participated in it. We have to work for it. Otherwise, if it's a freebie, it doesn't feel good for us. It's not a real good relationship if we didn't work for it. So that's why he made a world. He hid himself in the world, that we can't see him. And then he put us in this world in order that we work through Torah and mitzvahs to choose to have that relationship with God from our own choosing and our own will, to develop our will, to really love that and want that. Okay? But the innermost, a higher level of why God made a creation, of course, was because it's the nature of infiniteness to express infiniteness. And one dimension, one aspect of that is of him expressing his infiniteness is to make us creations and bestow infinite goodness. Wouldn't you agree? That would be one expression of expressing infiniteness, okay? So, of course, in terms of bestowing infiniteness to creations, that's one expression. Based on how we tend this garden will obviously determine our destiny. So once again, the parable is, your life is a garden, okay? And it goes, of course, into your mind as well, our thoughts that we think, okay? So in other words, you gotta work, okay? That nasty 4-letter word, work, okay? And it has 4 letters this time. Our part in creation, our portion of fulfillment in our destiny, how much and in what way infinity can express itself, how much for us, in terms of our decision and our will, we would like infinity or infiniteness to express itself. In other words, there's God. How much can we participate in God expressing his infiniteness in this world? How greater of an expression can we participate? Can we help? I'll give you an example. There's a great, one of the greatest midrashim, so impactful, still rings in my head to this day. It's in the midrash of Ruth, where it brings down 3 characters that were shown what it wrote about them in the Torah, and they both had expressions, wow, if it wrote that about me, how much more I could have done. You know? As a matter of fact, last week's Parsha, Moshe was told, go back to Egypt. Aaron's going to come greet you. Aaron came and greeted him. Aaron, the brother of Moses, knew that Moses was now picked to be the leader. Aaron was number 1. He was top dog, and now he's been demoted, if you call it that way, to number 2. But Aaron was really genuinely happy. He was really happy in his heart because his real desire was, let's get out of here. I don't care how the redemption of Egypt has to come. Let's just get out. He was very happy. And he went out into the desert and he greeted Moshe. So he was told, I guess Aaron, in the spiritual wavelength of things, his soul showed, you see what God says, look what I wrote about you in the Torah. And Aaron says, if you wrote that about me, gosh, I would have gone out with a band. I would have hired the orchestra and gone out and greeted him with a band. I would have had the Rolling Stones go out there, right? And Pink Floyd. No, they're anti-Semites. I would have, right? I would have come out with I would have done so much more. Think about it. It's not that, I would have been more publicized. I would have got more publicity. Wow, if you wrote that praise about me, which is not, he's not interested in praise. Okay, on the soul level, all of us are the very same. Okay, on the soul level, we're not interested. We're interested in more of God's expression. So wow, if that was an expression, I could have done it greater, which is good. Okay, the other one was I'm trying to remember. Boaz, Aaron, and Reuven. Reuven was actually first. Reuven. God showed Reuven, he says, this is what I wrote about you, that you wanted to save Joseph when the brothers wanted to kill him, and you said, no, don't kill him, put him in the hole. And then you had an intention to go back and get him, and he wasn't there. And Reuven sees that and he says, oh man, if I would have known that they would have written about me, gosh, I would have just put him on my shoulders right in front of everybody. I would have been a chutzpah and would have said, to heck with you guys, I'm taking him home. Right? Gosh, what a greater way I could have expressed it. My faith in God, my trust in God, for what the right thing to do is. And then Boaz, it says, he saw Ruth was collecting in the field, right? And he, said, hi, who are you? Where are you from? Okay, you're a relative. Oh, give her some cereal, give her some sugar smacks. So he got her some sugar smacks, right? Some cereal. And it wrote that down, that his heart went out for her and brought her something to eat. And he says, whoa, Boaz says, if I would have saw that, I would have made steaks. I would have done a barbecue, right? Well, fajitas, with a salsa, right? I would have gone all out. I would have had a greater expression, okay? The idea really is, it's a garden, and we're here to express. But we're not here, and our potential is God's potential. Okay? Am I making sense to anybody here? Okay? If I'm not, stop me. Okay? We can stop the tape. It's okay. Okay? So there is a master gardener. Thank God for God. Oh, I always thank God for God. Otherwise, we would be completely lost. But we must do our part. The major work of the field is in the mind. Okay? So here comes the fact number one. This needs to be capitalized. Okay? Just 1 second. I'm making a note. So step one, our mind is like a garden. You plant seeds, it is going to sprout. Also, my dad, he likened it to an oven. An oven doesn't care what you put in. You could put a cake in. You could put dirt. If you put dirt, it's just going to cook. The same thing by your oven, by your mind. You plant seeds, it's going to sprout. Whatever it is. Oh, man, it's so freaky. What are you going to say to that, right? It's almost overwhelming, okay? So the idea really is just to be aware, okay, of your thoughts. Because it's like a garden, and every thought is going to be like a seed, okay? You don't want to put dirt in your oven because your oven's just going to cook it up. So here's the first source that I found, quite an interesting source. It says, beloved is man who was created in the divine image. An even greater endearment is that he was told that he was created in the divine image. All mankind, as we say, the first verse in Genesis, God said, right? Let us make man in our likeness and image, right? I'm not going to get into who he's talking to. There's so many commentaries who he's talking to. But he says, let's make man in our likeness and our image. Okay, I think that a lot of people don't really think this through. What does it mean that we are made in God's image? Likeness and image, 2 words, right? Why the 2 words? So there are a lot of commentaries. I'll just bring you a couple of them. Rashi is the most interesting one that I brought here, actually. The first one, actually, Bitsalmenu, which is in our mold. We made a prefab mold because there's no image in God. God doesn't have an image. God forbid. We know that. That's basic Judaism 101, right? No image by God. So what was he referring to when he said Bitsalmenu, in our image? Well, Rashi says a prefab mold. We got a mold. We'll make him in our mold. Okay? And our mold is really referring to, in terms of the Kabbalists, is that all of the worlds. There are other dimensions beyond our dimension. Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and our world, Asiya, right? These other dimensions, right? And he was talking to them. And Atzilut, of course, we don't really know what's in the highest of these dimensions, but we know what comes out of it, which is the 10 Sfirot. The 10 Sfirot, for people who've been to my classes, are these like 10 garments, so to speak. That God made these garments, or these hanhagot, ways of behaviors. 10 behavior expressions. So the mold that God made man in is in these 10 behavior expressions. Okay? A mold of that. And then the second one, kidmusenu, in our likeness. In our likeness and in our image and in our likeness, actually he says to understand and to intellectualize. Lahavin ulahaskil. Now here's an interesting insight that Rashi says here. Lahavin ulahaskil has to do with the mind. So very much, and you're going to see that it's very much likened to the mind. Now, of course, it's not really like God's mind in a certain way. My thoughts are not like your thoughts, okay? But very much so. Kidmusenu, like us, okay? So meaning there's a concept of thought that have to do with us being in the image of God, okay? Other people like the Sephorno wants to say, the one it happens to do with also with actions, the upper and the lower. In other words, why the double language, Bitsalmenu has to do with the upper worlds, Kidmusenu has to do with the lower realms. In other words, like the whole gambit, the whole spectrum of all of creation is going to be squished into man. Okay? In other words, dynamic, cosmic, spiritual worlds as well as physical worlds. In other words, even in our likeness, our physical likeness, there is a resemblance of us to God. As we say, God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, our head is the Yud. Our 2 arms are the letter Hey. Vav is the torso, and the Hey is the legs. So even in a physical form like that, okay? The Yud Kei Vav Kei is expressed everywhere, okay? And it's expressed through man, okay? And according to the Orach Chaim, he says attributes. Why two words? In our likeness, in our form, was attributes of mercy and attributes of justice. Okay? In other words, just like God has attributes of mercy and attributes of din, justice, judgment, so also, okay? Man also has those attributes that he behaves in the world. You're either sweet or you're mean, okay? The first point is to know the creative power of the mind. We were created in the image and likeness of God. I'm reading the text. The main idea is that we were able to have an understanding and intellect. We also see that the mind is constantly thinking. There are many different types of thoughts, which we'll get into later. Among those thoughts are the ones involved in creating and bringing things to fruit. Interestingly enough, I think only in this century do we ever finally come up with the idea of how man is a goal-oriented being. When they figured that out, Only when they tried to make robots that would do things like man. In other words, they tried to make machines that were going to be a goal-oriented machine. Did they have to try to figure out what's going on and how man achieves goals? In one aspect, being made in the image and likeness of God means just as God's expression creates, starting from will and then to a thought, and then to the manifestation of that thought or word, so too man is also the same structure. First he thinks a thought and then goes and fulfills it, hopefully. Okay? The idea really is to focus that thought, because as we're going to see, a person thinks around 60,000 thoughts a day. So if you're out of focus, so then you're going to be going nowhere. Okay? It's all about the ratzon. Kabbalah gives the imagery of the first impulse of creativity to a seed. That's the yud of yud ke vav ke. It's actually called a seed that becomes implanted into the mind. That's bina. That's also in the mind. Okay? We say that there are two hemispheres in the brain, right and left, right? So in Kabbalah, that's attributed, the right of the brain is attributed to the facility of wisdom, chachma. Now, chachma is closed. Chachma is closed very much like a seed. If you open up and you cut open a seed, you don't see a plant in there. You cut an avocado seed in half. You don't see it, a tree. You won't, right? It's hidden. Not until you put it in the ground. And then the other part, bina, which is called understanding, breaks the seed apart and brings out the potential from that seed. Okay? So those are the two aspects of the mind. Chachma and bina, really represented by the two first names of God, Yud and He. Okay? The mind is the fertile soul, always seeking to bring out whatever was planted in it. As we know, seeds only know how to produce their own kind. A wheat kernel cannot sprout corn. A peach pit cannot grow avocados. Our mind will only grow out experiences that are planted within it. Okay? Get that. It's really important, right? How come I'm not getting this, experience in my life, Rabbi? I want more of this, or I want this, and want that. How come I'm not getting it? Okay? What kind of seeds are you planting in your mind? How come I don't get it? I'm putting things in my oven and I only get out dirt. Because you're putting dirt in your oven. Okay? Put cake in the oven, you'll get cake. Don't plant a wheat seed expecting to get corn. Ain't happening. Okay? Another comparison is that the mind is likened to an oven, like I told you here. The oven doesn't care what you put in, it bakes it. You can't expect to put dirt in the oven and get cake, period. This is an indication from nature. Our mind is very much the same. Certain thoughts are seeds that need to be planted, nurtured in order to grow. Okay? Okay, now, choosing the seeds. Okay? The question is, what seeds we decide to implant in our minds. We're going to start anew here, You have to say, thank God for God. Thank God that creation is renewed every single moment. Okay? So you don't get hung up with the past. That's the big thing. Don't get haunted with it either, though. Okay? Which most people think that they've released themselves of their past, but they're still chugging along on the same engine. Above all, okay, so the question is, what seeds we decide to implant in our minds? Above all, are they good seeds? Or are they confusion? Okay? I just saw that recently. Where did I see that? Oh, yeah. Exile. Talked about the exile of the mind, right? The exile of the mind. The worst exile of the mind, of course, is if you don't even know you're in exile. That's the worst kind. But then, of course, there's exile of just you're not clear on what you need to do. And the ultimate redemption, I'm telling you, is clarity. The ultimate joy the Mesil Shisharim brings down is just knowing you're doing the right thing. It's a great, great sense of joy. Imagine right here now, you can feel the feeling that you're doing the exact, absolute right thing right now. Because you're right here learning Torah, right? Nothing better, right? So you have to, and we'll go with more with that later, okay? If one can adopt and integrate the higher style of thinking, then it will surely bring forth a higher experience. Firstly, one must develop the ability to be aware of his or her own thoughts. That's the first thing, okay? But before exploring the types of thoughts, let's examine another key source exposing the power of our thoughts. And here we have what I spoke about earlier, okay? As my Rosh Hashiva said, you are the force. And from this Chazal, he said this, actually, in a Musar Shmuz that he gave. You are the force that produces the force that sets the force in motion. How is that? So this is a passage from the Talmud in Makos that it brings down the way which a person wants to go, they lead him. I'm saying it in English. I translate it literally because the Maharsha gets into this. Because he says, what? Who is they? Okay, that's the question. I wanted to make that stick out instantly. Like I say, I don't want this to be a long book. I want it to be short, so I need to cut to the chase here. Okay? Usually it would be the person, a way which a man wants to go, he's led, or God leads him. God is singular. But yet, B'derech shadam rotzei leilech molichin oso is plural. Who's molichin? Who is leading him? Here it comes. Okay? If that principle meant that God leads a person the way he wants to go, then the Hebrew should have been written in the singular form, the way which a person wants to go, he, God, leads him. But the Hebrew is plural. Okay? The answer is, with every thought, word, and action a person takes or thinks, an angel is created. Okay? An angel is created for every single thought. That's kind of, what does that mean when you think about it? And what is an angel? Yeah. All right? Yes. Okay? It's a responsibility. We're made in the image and likeness of God. We're constantly creating. Our mind is like a garden. You got to, but listen, don't worry. I do believe that the universe is user-friendly. Okay? Okay? So here's some of the Maharshah's words. Now, whether it is a good angel or bad angel that is created depends upon that particular thought, word, or deed. It's that simple. Okay? And yet, this is an astounding idea just to realize that every thought creates an angel. And then, of course, okay, that angel pulls you, molichin, to pull you to only bring out the fruition of whatever it is, the nature of that thought. Okay? Now, there's different kinds of angels because there's different kinds of thoughts, right? So some thoughts that we know just come in and out. They don't really stick much in our minds. Very much like if you're at the airport and you're looking at the screen there, and they have the news, and they have underneath the news, they have this kind of like ticker tape stuff constantly streaming underneath, earthquake in Bangladesh, and then it goes this, and stock market, and I don't know whatever he's talking about, but whatever, there's this kind of constant kind of stream underneath, okay? So those kind of flow in and out, right? So you could say, okay, maybe they're angels, malachim, but they're not strong, because they come in, they come out, they don't have much, right? But of course, a stronger angel, and I'm going to cut to the chase, depends upon your level of conviction. That means to the degree that you believe in it with a greater conviction will be the stronger angel, the stronger power, the stronger force. Of course, an angel is not like what we might have in previous associations, a little naked baby flying with wings, with bad aerodynamics, okay? Or Monty Python or whatever, okay? Right, sorry about that. So in any case, that's not what angels are here, okay? Let's go a little bit more, okay? Additionally, this angel we create pulls a person to materialize, to manifest whatever is the nature of that thought, word, or action. In other words, we are involved in producing a force that pulls us to manufacturing the material, physical aspect of our thoughts. Our thoughts create angels, which generates those thoughts into reality. Very much like Tzelem Elokim. God says, let's make man in our image, right? Those are thoughts. Okay, actually those are words, okay? But it started off with a thought, right? And we know that God, in his heavenly realm, has angels in the other dimensions. He has forces that do his will. We are also involved in creating forces that we're supposed to be in control of. Supposed to be. Rabbi Nachman brings down that, the whole goal of a Jew is to have creation, dominion over the angels. All angels, right? Did you ever hear that before? It's the whole goal, right, of an Israeli, right? The goal of an Israeli, he says Israeli. It's really funny. If you lived in Israel, you're like, the falafel guy? Okay. So the idea here is of the creative force that is within us all the time. Just to get a sense of it for a second. That you're creating all the time. Your oven is cooking. The soil is sprouting all the time. Okay? It's an unbelievable, huge creative force that you have to integrate. And then, of course, now that you integrated the concept of how great a creative force we are, I didn't get into the Nefesh Chaim. I should have to go back a little bit more, because I remembered this text in the Nefesh Chaim. He brings down, what does it mean, but Tzelem Elokim? Because the rest of the verse says, let us make man in our likeness and in our image, but Tzelem Elokim bara'uso. In the image of Elokim. Elokim, right? The Nefesh Chaim brings down in the very first gate here, right? That he brings down Elokim. What is the name of Elokim? There are many names of God. There are many names of God. So he says here, okay, that Elokim, we should actually always have in mind the kavana, the special intention, even when we say Elokeinu, or Elokim, that he is Bal hayecholis ubal kochot kulam. It means he is master of all abilities, master of all forces. Master of all forces, master of all abilities. In other words, there's nothing he cannot do. Think about that. Baal, we're made in Tzelem Elokim. That is a huge creative force. Now, we're only in the image, a likeness of God, of that, because, of course, as he brings down, man can, God can, make wood and he keeps the wood going, right? Because he wills. Yes, you can. Because he wills the wood into being created every single moment. He wills the man, of course, he can't make the wood. He can't make the tree. He takes the wood that's already made and builds a house. Okay? It's a little bit different. God is yesh mi'ayin, creates something from nothing. And man, of course, has to take whatever's there. But, nevertheless, there's a huge creative potential by saying man is created in the image of Elokim. Okay? So where it can go, that's what we're here to explore. How far? But the idea really here is it's very powerful. Okay? Okay, so let's go a little bit more. The amazing idea needs to be explored, and its implications are staggering. Firstly, is it literally every thought? What is an angel that my thoughts are talking about? That my thoughts are taking part in its creation. If every thought creates an angel, how many thoughts a day do I think? So I already told you. Estimated around 60,000. Some people say 100,000. Are these entire angels the same? What about angels of the past that I have already created? What about actions of angels in word? Is there a difference in them? It's a question I still have to this day. Which is more powerful, the thought angel or the action? Don't forget, every word creates a malach. I just read in Sichot Aran, Rabbi Nachman this last week about words. You have to be very careful with your words. I'm talking about saying calling yourself a wicked person, or I'm going to do a wicked act. Even if it's in joking, you're not allowed to do that. because the creative force of those words brings about you to do those things. And he brings an example of this great king called Yehu, who in the time of the kings, when he went on a whole rampage spree, killing every idol worshiper of Baal, and he got to one city, and he because of course he's going from city to city, town to town, killing anybody who worshipped the Baal, who did idolatry. And he got to this one place, and he says, and he says, okay, we're gonna. He rented out Reliant Stadium, okay, and he called all the priests. He says, get every single person to come here, because we're gonna have an unbelievable spectacle in worshiping the Baal. And worshiping the Baal. What Achav did, he just worshipped the Baal a little bit. Me, I'm gonna do so much greater. He was enticing the people with some advertising to saying, right, King Yehu is gonna worship the Baal big time. And he told everybody's got to come, Did some super advertising, social media, everywhere. He said, make sure everybody comes, because otherwise you're going to miss out. And there's a door prize for everybody. Okay? In any case, everybody came. He made sure everybody, he even had guys going around town, make sure everybody's there who worship the Baal. And as soon as everybody's there, of course, he had his guys lock the door. And then he went and killed everybody inside. Him and his men killed everybody. Okay? Night. Woo! I go to that party. Okay, so in any case, he said about himself, even in jest, he was just joking. He was just enticing the people to come. Oh, eventually he ended up serving idols. Everything that he was so against, he ended up falling in that sin himself. So that's why words are very powerful, very powerful. You can never say, I'm a wicked person, or, So what's more stronger? Thoughts, words, or actions? I always heard, and we all probably know the phrase, actions speak louder than words, right? Is that true? Maybe in a point, but you're going to see some text here, and we're going to go ahead and figure it out, okay? So if I change my thinking, can I change the angel? Yes, you can. Thereby doing what? And what's going on? Okay? Let's just finish this paragraph. Okay? Okay, so first of all, like I told you, not all thoughts are created equal. There is the thought generated from the most powerful belief and conviction, which is where we're heading towards. Okay? We're heading for a workout, okay, into how to deepen our beliefs and conviction, okay, in creating a more powerful force. And then when you do that with, as later chapters in the book go to, with a group, that's an even more powerful force, okay? I hold this to be absolutely revolutionary. If people were to live out this, then it would definitely impart a change globally. So there's the thought generated from the most powerful belief and conviction, or there's a ticker tape mind, like I told you, sputter, that really has no direction. Someone explained it to me, comparing it to, like what I told you, the news program on the TV screen. There is a man saying, right? There's a man giving and saying the news, and at the same time there's this ticker tape wording constantly moving on the bottom of the screen, the words racing on the bottom. They don't have as much impact as the man talking. The same thing occurs with our thoughts. There are heavier ones and weaker ones. Every thought is involved in making angels, but some are more powerful indeed. We are taught that we are not responsible for the thoughts that might pop into our head. That's an important line, because we do know that there are people, they go to the rabbis who were visited. I heard this from Rabbi Leff. Guy, I get these thoughts in my mind, Rabbi. They're terrible thoughts. They're bad thoughts. Right? And he feels terrible about them, right? Am I responsible for those thoughts? Are we responsible for the thoughts that pop in to our head? Okay? And they do pop in, okay? Well, could be the Yetzer Hara, could be an Ibur. Could be, no, not an Ibur, because those are positive. Those are positive. Yeah. But it could be, whatever it is, the idea here is, bottom line, as it was told to me, we're not responsible for those thoughts. If you hold on to them, then you are. You get a choice. Now, why do I have such a choice? It's such a hard test, Rabbi. They pop in, they keep popping in. Enough times, if you resist and you make the choice every time, and it's about being consistent, a lot of this is about consistency, okay? It's what we choose to do with that thought that we are responsible for, okay? It's only if you hold on to the thought. But if you let it pass through you, you're not responsible for that thought. So that's one sense that thoughts do pop in our heads, but then, which we're going to get to, the idea of creating a higher level of thinking, okay? Because if we now work towards integrating and living a higher level of thinking, how much more can we generate in our lives and the lives of the people around us, okay? So what do we cover today? Let's just go over. 1, our mind is like a garden. Whatever we plant in it, it will grow, okay? 2, we are created in the image and likeness of God. Part of that image and likeness of God has to do with our thinking and our intellect and our understanding, okay? And then, of course, God being Tzelem Elokim means Bal Yecholes, Bal Kochot Kulam, master of all forces, master of all abilities. Our abilities are certainly greater than what we think, okay? A lot of times, right? Someone asked me a question. I forgot, maybe it was in this class. We only got the 2 commandments. We only heard the first 2 commandments at Mount Sinai. After the first 2 commandments, right, we died after each one. We heard, I am Hashem, your God. We died. We were revived. And then we heard the 2nd commandment. Don't have any other gods. We died. We were revived. And then all of a sudden we said, we can't take this anymore. Moshe, can you go get the rest of them and we'll hear from you, right? So, people ask the question, well, what was God thinking? God knew that we were going to pop out of our bodies. What came to my mind was God thought we can do 10 reps. We said, no, I can only handle 2. We limited ourselves. God says, you can do 10. You can do 10 push-ups, right? Right? No. Okay? The idea is to go beyond. The idea is to go outside the box, right? To go beyond our normal thinking, okay? This is just the intro. What? Okay, we'll stop now.
Previous parsha, we're talking about Basha,